A quick new idea, daily, from the world's greatest TEDx talks. I'm your host, Atossa Leoni, and this is TEDx Shorts. When you like a Facebook post or use your credit card, you may not realize you're leaving behind what big data experts call a digital footprint. Columbia University professor Sandra Matz's work explores the relationship between people's psychological characteristics, such as their personality, and their digital histories. While Sandra studies the effects of the misuses of big data, like in the case of Cambridge Analytica, in today's episode, she explains what people's digital footprints say about their socio-psychological characteristics, the real-life consequences of mining this information, and how the insights extracted from people's footprints could be used to actually help individuals and businesses make better decisions.
I want to take you back with me for a minute to December 3rd, 2016. A Saturday that probably doesn't mean anything to most of you, but one that I actually remember very clearly. And that's because I woke up to way too many emails for a regular Saturday. Now, my first thought was, what the hell did I do last night? It took me a few seconds to realize that obviously I hadn't done anything, because at the time I was in the final stages of writing up my PhD, and my only two friends were Microsoft Word and my Nespresso machine. So luckily, it wasn't the aftermath of a crazy night out. It was this new story here. The story of a company called Cambridge Analytica, which had created detailed psychological profiles of millions of US citizens during the 2016 presidential election. And they had allegedly used those profiles to target voters with Facebook ads that were highly personalized and essentially designed to discourage them from going to the ballots and putting in their vote for Hillary Clinton. Now, I don't want to talk about Cambridge Analytica today. And that's just because we simply don't know what actually happened there, and we probably never will. However, what we do know is that the technology of psychological targeting exists, and that more and more companies are using it. So instead of wasting my time on Cambridge Analytica, what I want to do is demystify psychological targeting for you by doing three things. I want to explain how psychological targeting works, how effective it is, and most importantly, think with you about how we as a society might want to use it. Because the reason I'm doing this research is not because I want to help companies squeeze every last penny out of their customers. It's because we truly have to understand, we have to develop an objective and scientific understanding of psychological targeting if we want to engage policymakers, business leaders, and frankly, everybody who's willing to listen in a conversation on how to manage it effectively. Okay, so how does psychological targeting work? Which essentially boils down to the question of how can we assess the psychology of millions of people in order to target them with personalized ads. And up to a few years ago, I would essentially ask people to tell us how much they agree with different statements, and then based on their responses, we would conclude that they're more extroverted, for example, or more introverted. And this works perfectly well in the context of a research study where you survey a few hundred people, but you can imagine that there's just no way that you can get millions of people complete one of these questionnaires for 10 to 20 minutes before you show them the right ad. So the question is really, if we can't ask people directly, how else can we indirectly glean their psychological characteristics? And the answer is this. We look at their digital footprint. And what I mean by that are all the traces that you leave online on a daily basis. It's what you share and like on Facebook. It's the cookies that keep track of the websites you visit. It's what you post on Twitter, what you buy with your credit card, all the way to what you listen to on Spotify. And you can imagine that all these traces combined can actually tell us a lot about your habits, your preferences, your needs, essentially who you are as a person. Most importantly, these very simple relationships between someone's digital footprints and their psychology is all we need to actually apply psychological targeting using existing targeting tools. Because what Facebook, for example, allows you to do is target people not only based on socio-demographic variables like age, gender, location, but also based on interests. And because interests are inherently related to psychological traits, Facebook effectively also allows you to target people or audiences of different psychological profiles. Now, that brings us to the second question. Can we really influence people's behavior by targeting them based on their psychological profile? Is psychological targeting really effective? And the answer is yes. And I'm just going to show you the results of one of my studies, but we've tested this in many different contexts, and the results are always very similar. So in this particular case, we teamed up with a beauty retailer in the UK, and we advertised their online store. So our goal was to get women to click on an ad, go to the store, and then purchase something. And we created extroverted ads, and we measured simply purchases on the beauty retailer's website. And here's what we found. So people in the mismatching conditions, they did purchase, sure, it was advertising, but people in the matching conditions were about 50% more likely to make a purchase. So extroverts were more likely to make a purchase if they saw the extroverted ad, and introverts were more likely to purchase when they saw the introverted ad. And that's pretty astonishing, because this is really the simplest manipulation possible. The only aspect of the user journey that we customized was the ad that people saw. And we used a relatively crude measure or approach to profile people. There's algorithms, machine learning algorithms out there today, and that do a much better job at profiling people and are much more accurate than what we have followed here in this case. One of my colleagues, for example, showed that computers are roughly as accurate at predicting your personality as your spouse is, just by looking at your Facebook likes. They're better than work colleagues, they're better than friends, and they're even better than family members. So if you compare what we've done here to what the future is likely to hold, psychological targeting really is only going to be more effective in the years to come. And even that, I think, is really just the beginning of something much bigger. So you are all carrying around your smartphones almost 24/7, which means that you can be tracked almost continuously in real time, and that one can not only make inferences about your psychological traits, but also the mood you're in, the place you're in, the context you're in. So you're no longer just an extrovert, you're now an extrovert who's currently in a good mood, having a good time with friends in a park. And even that pales in comparison to what I think the future is going to hold. So if we consider all of this, it's not really surprising that the public's initial reaction to psychological targeting in the context of Cambridge Analytica was a very negative one. Some media outlets have even gone as far as calling psychological targeting a threat to democracy. Now, I want to pause for a second and consider a different scenario. Let's imagine that not Donald Trump, but Hillary Clinton had used psychological targeting in her campaign. And not to create fear, and not to discourage people from voting, but to actually encourage them to engage. Like trying to truly understand what they care about, and to communicate with them in a way that makes them want to be part of the political landscape again. I'm sure that the public perception would have been a very different one. Now, my point here is that psychological targeting isn't evil per se. It's really about how we use it. So as much as psychological targeting can pose a threat in the wrong hands, it could also provide a solution to what, in my opinion, might be an even bigger threat to democracy. And that's disengagement. Like if 40% of people in the US decide to stay home and not vote, then this defeats the very idea, the very notion of democracy, where everybody engages. And because psychological targeting really is all about understanding and engaging with people on a personal level, I think it could actually help us save democracy. Now, we might collectively decide that we don't want psychological targeting anywhere near our democratic process, and that's okay. Because elections are really just one context out of many in which psychological targeting could be valuable and could act as a catalyst for social good. My students and I are currently working on a number of projects where we're using psychological targeting to try help people live better lives. So for example, we're trying to help people save more by identifying personalized saving goals. And this is really just a snapshot of what's possible. The list here is almost endless. So what I hope that you take away from this talk today is really that psychological targeting is a new reality. It's out there and it's effective. And for me personally, this is as exciting as it is scary, because psychological targeting really provides amazing opportunities, but it also poses some pretty serious challenges. So what that means is that we all have to engage in the topic. We all have to advocate for an ethical use, and we all have to show the people who have the power to make decisions and drive change that we care.
The TEDx talk you just listened to was recorded at a TEDx event in Chicago, Illinois. All TEDx events are independently organized by volunteers who believe in TED's mission of ideas worth spreading. Special thanks to the organizing team at TEDxChicago. Want to listen to the full talk? Find Sandra's talk and more at ted.com/TEDxShorts. I'm Atossa Leoni. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.